Hey everyone, and welcome right back to another explainer. Today, we're exploring a truly fascinating concept from Dr. Brian J. Bailey's framework in Leadership Volume 1. We're going to look at leadership not just as a set of skills you can acquire, but as an actual architectural structure. And in this specific blueprint, while the ultimate foundational element, the concrete upon which absolutely everything else rests, is wisdom. We'll be breaking down how this source material defines wisdom, not just as some abstract philosophical idea, but as a deeply practical, structural necessity for literally anyone in a position of authority.
Okay, let's dive into this with a pretty powerful ancient quote. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. Now this comes straight from Proverbs, where King David is advising his son and heir, Solomon. And Dr. Bailey's text really emphasizes this idea that before a leader can rely on things like vision or faithfulness or diligence, they've got to secure this core prerequisite first. It is the principal thing. It's the absolute starting point for all effective governance and authority.
But what exactly are we talking about when we say wisdom? Because it's a big word. According to the text, the definition is wonderfully punchy and direct. Wisdom is simply the ability to make the right choices. It sounds incredibly simple, right? But think of it like the bedrock layer of a massive building. If a leader cannot consistently make the right choices, well, any vision or infrastructure they try to build on top of that foundation is going to eventually crack and just crumble.
So here is our structural roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The principal qualification. 2. The 7 pillars of wisdom. And 3. The keys to actually receiving wisdom.
Section 1. The principal qualification. Wisdom in governance.
So before we start erecting walls and putting on a roof, we really need to understand how this foundation actually functions in the real world. And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic nature of wisdom as it's detailed in Proverbs chapter 8. On one hand, you have the internal possession of wisdom. It brings counsel, understanding, and strength to the leader on the inside. But then, look at the flip side. This internal possession directly translates into external execution. It is through wisdom that kings reign, princes decree justice, and nobles rule. The text is making the point that wisdom is what ultimately controls those in authority, basically allowing them to execute their duties justly and effectively.
Moving into Section 2, the 7 pillars of wisdom, holding up the house.
Taking a cue from ancient texts which state that wisdom has built her house and hewn out her 7 pillars, the source material identifies exactly what these load-bearing columns actually are. Check this out. A wise leader must be pure, peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. The ancients firmly believed that wisdom led to the wholesomeness of life, and this structural checklist shows us exactly how that works. Let's quickly break these down to see how they uphold a leader.
So, the very first pillar is pure. A wise leader has to conquer their passions in fleshly lusts. But it goes way deeper than just surface behavior. The text really emphasizes that a leader's internal motives must be entirely purified. They have to be able to withstand heavenly scrutiny, which means there is absolutely no deception, no hidden agenda, or guile behind their actions. It's structural integrity at its absolute core.
Next up, we have the pillars of being peaceable and gentle. And these two really work hand in hand. Being peaceable means actively pursuing harmony and avoiding those unnecessary confrontations just to maintain unity. Gentleness, meanwhile, dictates exactly how a leader handles the truth. Because it's not enough just to be honest, right? A leader has to speak the truth carefully, keeping the law of kindness on their lips. In fact, the text strongly warns against leaders who are rough or brutish, noting that a truly wise leader cradles their speech and their touch with deep sensitivity. Kind of like a nurse cherishing a child.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how these ancient pillars translate directly into modern management dilemmas. Take easy to be entreated. This essentially means having a sweet reasonableness, yielding in unimportant matters, actively listening, and being sympathetic rather than just forceful all the time. Then we have full of mercy and good fruits. The author actually notes advice from veteran missionaries here. Workers will continually fail. It's just a fact. A wise leader must be long-suffering with complainers, freely forgiving, and temperate. You absolutely can't just give up on your team.
And that brings us to the final 2 columns holding up the house, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Basically, if a leader shows favoritism, they compromise the whole structure. They have to treat all staff equally, giving everyone a fair and equal place in their heart. And finally, without hypocrisy. A leader must be completely genuine, practicing what you preach,
non-negotiable. The text severely warns that a hypocritical leader is like a flawed flask. They act as faulty material that will inevitably cause the collapse of their own leadership, and they'll deeply disillusion their followers along the way.
All right, Section 3, Keys to Receiving Wisdom, Unlocking the Blueprint.
We are fully shifting from theory to practice here. Because how does a leader actually acquire this foundational material? Well, let's move to and see how this builds through 4 sequential steps provided in the text. Step 1 is the absolute starting point, the fear of the Lord, which is defined here as hating evil, pride, and arrogance. Step 2 is pleasing God by ordering your conversation and actions to do His will, not your own. Step 3 requires active pursuit, seeking Him early. And step 4 is just incredibly practical. Walk with the wise. As you intentionally place your feet in the path of wise people, that wisdom literally transfers to you.
So the crucial point is perfectly summarized by this ancient quote from Ecclesiastes. Getting wisdom isn't just some academic exercise. It isn't just reading a stack of management books and calling it a day. According to Dr. Bailey's framework, it is entirely dependent on a leader's character and their alignment with divine principles. Wisdom is ultimately a gift given to the person who intentionally orders their life to be good and pleasing in God's sight.
And that brings us to the end of our architectural inspection today. But before we go, I want to leave you with a provocative thought based on everything we've just unpacked. Which pillar is missing from your leadership structure today? Seriously, think about it. Are you struggling with being easily entreated? Is there maybe a tiny crack in your foundation caused by partiality or hypocrisy? Take this blueprint, apply it to your own daily management principles, and ensure your house is built to stand the test of time. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.